What's up, Liron here, and today we're reviewing Cadmium Orange by SAA. What's up, Liron here. Thank you for joining me in another episode of The Paint Show. And apologies, it's been a while since the last episode. I wanted to do one for a while now, and now we finally get to it. So today I'm going to review Cadmium Orange by SAA, and I really want to thank Chris Bushnell for sending me this one alongside these two tubes of Tropical Phthalo Blue and Cadmium Lemon, okay? And the pens, sorry, not tubes. And he also sent me back in the day these SAA tubes. So Chris, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And these paints are excellent. Let me tell you, the quality is amazing. These compete with all of the major brands that I know. So far, I've been very pleased with them. They're very soft. So if you like that kind of quality, it's great for you. They rewet super easily, strongly pigmented. I've been really enjoying using them on location and inside as well. So today we're going to focus on Cadmium Orange. Now, what I love about this color is it is a cadmium, but it is transparent. So SAA did a really good job with this one. I'm going to give you a more up-close look of the pan. We're going to open it up together. But in any case, this is the pigment is P05, which is Hansa Orange. I think it's a very good pigment in itself. From what I did some reading and some research, it has a good Lightfastness, so it doesn't have 3 stars, it has 2, but hopefully I think that means it will last for a long time. So what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna switch the angle. I want to show you the pan up close. We're gonna open it up together, and then I'm gonna show you what it looks like and perhaps do a very quick kind of still life demo of some oranges or something like this that will allow me to show you this paint in action. So let's get started. So first I want us to take an up-close look at the pan. As I said, Cadmium Orange. Now I do want to mention, on their website they call this Cadmium Orange Hue, but on the pan it says Cadmium Orange. I went ahead and checked. It's the same catalog number, 512, so it seems to be the same paint, same pigment, same everything, so it's probably the same one. So this is P05, which is Pigment Orange 5, Hansa Orange. Lightfastness is 2 out of 3 stars, which is, I think, decent. It is transparent. Some serial numbers, SAA, a very impressive brand that I've really enjoyed using so far. So I think now what I'm going to do is open it up, and hopefully my nails will be enough to do the trick. Now they did mention that some paint around the edges of the pen is to be expected due to the manufacturing process, so we're not going to judge them harshly if that's the case. That's fine, and you can see that it is. So here's what we've got. I'm going to probably save the wrapper for later. There is a bit of a gap here. That's interesting. So I think what we're going to do now is I'm going to anchor it to something. I won't yet put it in my palette itself, but we're going to place it and start taking a look at what the paint looks like and do some good old experimentation. So with that being said, let's get started. Okay, so we'll get started with testing this color out. Now, one thing, I see that the white balance of the video isn't perfect. I'm gonna fix that hopefully after I edit it. So now I'm gonna just apply a very light, simple wash of this orange, and we'll slowly make it a little darker as I go along. It almost feels like it has a bit of pink or peach in it. What we're gonna do is I'm gonna do a flat wash as always, then wet and wet, some dry brush, and then I'm gonna show you the mixes using this very small still life kind of scene of apricots. And I did a painting of this scene before, and now it'll be nice to test it out with this. Now it feels at least quite transparent, and it doesn't get too dark. So I'm now going to try and dig through it. So the paint itself in its darkest form, and you can see this too by looking at the pen, isn't that dark. So you won't be able to achieve super a super dark value with it, which is fine. It may not be meant for that kind of thing. You know, I prefer paints that have that large value range, but the reality is you won't always get it with every paint, especially not with the yellows and oranges. So in any case, now I'm going to do some wet and wet. So I'm going to pre-wet this area. And then I'm gonna just start dabbing the paint into it. We're gonna see how it behaves. I didn't tape down the paper, but it's gonna be okay. It's not gonna be too wet for that. So I can see that it really disperses. Now this will change from one type of paper to another. What I'm using is a pulp paper, not a 100% cotton. It's acid-free and it's pretty good. It's the Canson Monval, but there are some better options out there. So it will definitely affect how the paint disperses into the paper, because pulp paper tends to have a more, it's less absorbent, and so a lot of the water tends to stay on the surface, and with that the paint flows actually even more than on cotton paper, where it soaks and absorbs the paint. So I think that's enough for this kind of a test. Because again, this doesn't get too dark. I'm gonna try and get it to be just a little darker, and you can probably see how soft the paint is just by how I dig through it. I think it is visible. This paint is very soft, which I love. And one other note about painting outside, so I find that it's actually pretty good for that. It's not too wet, even if you use it out of the tube. It won't leak too much, aside from the alizarin crimson where I made a mistake of not letting it dry enough, and I had that happen to me. But it is pretty good. So now I'm going to do some dry brush. So it still, I think, is suitable for working on location, so I wouldn't be too worried about that. So here we go. That's our dry brush. And I think now we can move on to some mixes. Now I'm going to have my palette here. I'm probably going to mix it with some French Ultramarine. The two seem to be, to me, intuitively, they will work pretty well. I may be wrong, of course, but we're going to see. So I'm going to clean out my brush a bit, and I'm just going to start applying this to my apricots here. And I'm going to add, and I'm showing you this real time, so that's a bit of a fun demo because it's been a while since we had a real time. I'm going to add a bit of a warm red, something like a cadmium red here to the mix, because the goal here is to show you how it mixes with other paints. So I think that'll be a good way of doing that. And again, this is just a fun little sketch. I'm not too worried about it looking perfect or anything like that. Just having fun. Starting to establish some color harmony and some of the values. Gonna mix it up with a little bit of red yet again. Now it's very important to connect shapes as much as possible when you start. So I'm gonna just flow from this one apricot to the other one. There's a lot of orange in the middle, in the center, but then we have a lot more red when we move towards the top section here. And I'm not sure, I think I will share my reference because I believe it is a copyright free picture. So if I don't, the reason was that I found out that it's not, so apologies about that. I can share maybe the previous painting that I did. Of this one, so that I'll definitely try and share, because you can use a painting as a reference for another one. So here around the bottom I do want to darken it up quite a bit, and again the mixes I'm using are mainly French Ultramarine. You can see here French Ultramarine and a bit of that cadmium-y red. So now I want to push the darkness here to be quite strong, because it is quite strong when I look at the picture, and I'm not afraid to also go back into this part because it's still quite wet, and make that a little stronger as well. It should be a little darker around these areas, like so. Then you get the basic shape of the apricots. Again, very simple, nothing too complex. I'm not trying to make it hard on myself. Next up, I'm going to do the branches, and for that I can use actually a bit of these two mixed together, so the orange and some French Ultramarine, and let's see what we get by doing that. Kind of a neutral, I had a feeling this is what I wanted to produce, a bit of a neutral color here, just for the branch. Some of the branch is going to be very light, so I'm just leaving it white. And again, just a quick sketch. Now I want to create some green, and that won't do me any good, the orange, because the orange will neutralize my green. So I'm just going to do a bit of French Ultramarine, and perhaps a bit of nickel azo yellow. Okay, I'm going to place that into the leaf here, like so. Now I have to significantly darken some areas of it. So I'm gonna go right back in there, darken it up. There is a bit of a darker leaf here I want to get in because it'll just create a nice contrast with the apricots. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that. There's another leaf around this area, but again, a very simple kind of still life scene. Now what we're going to do is make them pop by darkening the background significantly. And to do that, I'm actually going to use as assistance my Carbazole Violet, which is a very dark paint, will allow us to get this to be as dark as we want it to very fast. I'll mix it up with some of the French Ultramarine, and hopefully the result will be interesting. Now it should be a little green when I think about it, so I will add a bit of yellow to that. And this is the kind of scene that has a very dark background, which makes the main objects pop, as you can see here. And again, I don't do many real-time demos recently, so hopefully that'll be a good chance of doing that. Because real time, when I do a very complex painting, it just takes a lot of focus and effort, and it's just very hard, to be frank. I hope to get someone to help me with the camera work soon, hopefully in 2019. Someone to help me with that, and that'll make things a lot easier for me if I can get that to happen. And then I can focus more on talking while I paint and focus on the painting process as well, so I don't need to worry about logistical stuff. Okay, that's going to be a main thing for me for 2019. I will try, we'll see how that goes. It's been a while since I did like a vlog type of video, so I hope to provide such an update relatively soon. Going over all of this, and notice how it makes the apricot shape pop, adds a bit of depth to the scene. I'm gonna have to try and push it to be a little darker still. And the branches have some nice highlights over them. I try to avoid making my highlights completely white, so I do tend to use some color for them. But with this very quick demo, it's okay. For simplified paintings, especially when working in this kind of a small sketchbook, and you can't get too many layers in because the paper won't handle it, then it's good. You can definitely get away with using some perhaps white highlights. And the reason I don't like to use as much white highlights is I feel like it takes away from the sense of light in the painting, so I prefer not to do that. But in any case, this is pretty much it. A bit of a mess here, but you get the idea. Now, to make a better separation between the apricots, I'm gonna actually have to darken those as well, and they are darker around this area here. I would say significantly darker. That'll create the separation that we want and crave so much. And I could add some of the orange as well, but now at the very least you get a clearer understanding of what this orange looks like. I'm not going to blend too much because that'll probably pick up the previous layer again. It's not the craziest type of paper. And now I want to darken that bottom part as well here. It's very important because it is much, much darker. And now we get a better definition of the shapes of the apricots, and just a very quick sketch, definitely not my best, but just to give you an idea of what this orange looks like. And I think with that being said, we've pretty much covered everything. I didn't show you like individual mixes. What could be interesting maybe is to try and mix it with a phthalo kind of blue, because I used French Ultramarine here. So I'm going to grab just a bit of phthalo blue here, dig deep to get the pure one. And these probably also neutralize each other to some extent, as you can see here. Now let's add a bit more of the blue. So these work really well together. And I actually made a mistake. I messed it up. This is not my phthalo blue. This is my phthalo blue. Now we get it. So these two create kind of a green, which is much better, because I have to apologize. I'm holding my palette upside down. I'm used to having it like this, and I'm holding it like that, so all of the paints mixed up. But in any case, this is what you get when you mix the phthalo with this kind of cadmium orange. They create a very subtle gray-green, but very subtle. You can barely see its greenness. if you will. Now there are these small gaps that are killing the impression, so I'm gonna get rid of them because we don't need to have any highlights around that area. Also not in here. And I'll probably, if this was a finalized piece, I would have probably killed the other highlights as well just by using a bit of yellow. So let me try and get some pure yellow. There we go. And just go over these branches, because I don't like when there's too much white in the scene. But in any case, this is it. I hope you enjoyed this one. Showed you some mixes with red, some with blue. Very pleased with the result. Let me show it to you up close, just in case you want to see some more details. So, and here is my pen after playing around with it for a bit. It got a little contaminated, but that's fine. You know I don't mind these things. Oh, and one last note before we wrap it up. I did add a bit of darker orange to this spot. And this spot, they should have been a little darker, and now the impression is slightly improved. Okay, sometimes you need to get those mid values really well to get the right impression. And I had more of the extreme darks and then extreme lights. So now it's more balanced and we can wrap it up. So this is it for today's episode of the Paint Show. I have to admit, I felt a little rusty, so it took me some time, but hopefully it was an enjoyable one. I didn't do one again for quite some time. Here's the final kind of result, a sketch that's very dominated by the Cadmium Orange, so it gives you at least a good understanding of what this paint looks like in the context of other paints next to it. Again, I want to take this opportunity to thank Chris for sending me all of these amazing paints, and I always say, you know, people ask what's my favorite brand of watercolor paint. I will say it depends on where you live and how easy it is to get. If you're in the US, for me, no questions, Daniel Smith. If you're in Europe, Eastern or Western, if you're in Eastern Europe, St. Petersburg White Nights are really good. If you're in West Europe, perhaps Schminke will be a little better. If you're in the East, I don't know exactly the distribution there, but Shinhan PWC is great, a great brand of paints. And of course, there are many others if you're in the UK, SAA, like in this video. So I really think it depends on where you live and the ease in which you can get the paint. Okay, so for me in Israel, it's much easier to get St. Petersburg. We have a lot of these, and also Winsor Newton, which are great. Both Cotman that aren't as good, and also the professional line of paints. So it really depends on where you live and how easily you can get it, because it'll affect the price as well. So this is it for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Paint Show. We're chugging through. We're gonna have a lot more episodes in the future. I just sometimes let go of a certain playlist or a show or series and focus on other things, then I go back to it. So for example, it's going to be a while before we have the next Painting Masters episode, because I did quite a lot of these recently. Let me know in a comment below what you thought of this one. I really take all of the feedback into heart, and I'm literally taking the ideas you give me and they go straight into the list of future videos. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you again in another episode of The Paint Show and in another vid real soon.